Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Saving the World podcast with Luke Macmichael and Martin Rezny. Today is a very special day for us, Earth Day 2023. We're coming to you directly from our homes. This is our small, albeit personal contribution to Earth Day in some ways to kind of just review the highlights of why Earth Day is special. Been going on for 53 years, since 1970, started in the US, became a worldwide day around 1990. 1990, the entire world kind of accepted it. So in over 190 plus countries now. It's the world's largest secular holiday by far. And even though we don't necessarily get the day off work, I think it's good that we don't get the day off work because we can kind of go to school or talk to our friends and focus on what it's about, learning about the earth, learning about how to save the earth. Very much what we're about in this podcast. So we would be very remiss if we didn't have a special episode to dedicate to Earth Day and the progress it's made and how we can kind of continue to push forward, maybe in bigger and better ways, and just share a little bit about with you about why Earth Day is so precious and important for all of us. So, Martin, I'll let you jump in. What's your personal experience with Earth Day?
Well, actually, this might be more of a your experience type of episode because I wasn't actually specifically an environmentalist politically. I usually dealt with other kinds of things or causes primarily. So I was never really celebrating Earth Day as like a big thing for me. I sometimes try to like keep track with like what's happening during Earth Days. I would definitely like discuss issues. I guess like debating is the one thing that I've always done. But I'm also a kind of person who's not necessarily focused on like, oh, so I'm going to do it on this day and for like just this day in particular. And then like I'm more of a like if I think something's worth doing, I'm just doing it constantly, and I'm not really looking too much or caring too much about particular like special days or special celebrations or circumstances. But I realize it's kind of a me thing. Like most humans have it a bit different and really care about festivals and celebrations and stuff. So I'm actually more interested in like learning what your experience is and actually hearing some arguments for like why is it a big deal or why is it important to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would love to share that. Like, I think in general, festivals, if you think of why Christmas is important or Easter is important, or even Remembrance Day is, obviously a big one, I think, in many parts of the world. It's really just a time to just focus. And, we've got probably 100 different holidays now, Women's Days, all the different, every single group has their own holiday of some form or another. But I do think it's really important to have that particular time each year where it just comes up. And, we always say Christmas should be all year round, but we obviously don't have that much bandwidth, right? You only have so much bandwidth to focus on a certain topic or a certain thing. And it's just great when the whole world, everyone around you can kind of come together and you feel connected. Right?
Yeah, it's only so much ability to process sugar.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like you can only take so much of a good thing at one time, without kind of overloading or without it not mattering. So if you try to do Earth Day every day of the year, which I also absolutely agree, we should try to focus on the Earth stuff year round, as we're kind of doing it every weekend with our Saving the World. It's really very much in line with Earth Day, and it definitely gives us a good focus. So it definitely isn't as important, I guess you could say, for people who are focused on it all the time. But even then, it's that much more important for those people as an opportunity to share with others and unite with others and connect with others that might not think about Earth Day as much. So it is really important, I think. And I think it's really important to get the message out there and to really focus each year on maybe a specific message to kind of push it to the next level. What is next for the world? How do we really get, the solutions in place? We've talked so much about all the different solutions. I wanted to take 1 minute here. So we're just going to jump to the earthday.org website, which is, again, something I've looked at for many years, but every year I kind of go back to it on Earth Day and just say what's new this year, what are they working on, what's changed. So let me share that with you.
So are they doing some sort of a theme every year or focusing on something specific?
Absolutely. So this year's theme, let me bring it up here. Window, Earth Day 2023. So a really well organized site. This year's theme: invest in our planet. And it really is just about trying to refocus on how we can invest our time and ourselves and figuring out ways to make the planet a better place for everybody. I love the 3 focuses here. These are all, again, things I've kind of pushed for climate literacy. It's a great time for all the schools worldwide. I asked my kids, every one of them does at least some kind of Earth Day education in the schools, where they do quizzes, or they'll just talk about it, or they'll watch documentaries. So I don't think there's hardly any school in Canada that doesn't have some kind of special educational program around Earth Day. So we've been making great things. But I really think it should be a worldwide mandate to have some kind of climate education, climate literacy, so that everyone knows what these issues are, not just the 1 or 5% of us that are.
Yes. So as the right wingers would say, so you're for indoctrination and brainwashing.
We're for spreading truth and important information. Absolutely. Okay. If you call that the same thing, but yes. Spreading truth and important information that will help us save the world. And so climate literacy, really important. Another really important one, the Canopy Project, which is a huge international effort to just grow trees for no other reason than we need 3 trillion trees to essentially save the world and reduce carbon. Amazing project. They're not really focused on money. It's just about donating and growing as many trees as possible and spreading the word.
Actually, that's one thing I did. Like there were those people like you donate some money and they use drones to plant trees. Yes, I participated in that virtually. Yeah.
They're all part of the Canopy Project, which is just connecting in some ways to just get as many trees, protect the forests. Extremely important, and I think most people realize how important that is, but it just gives us.
No, I think like that's one of the things that is least what would you call it, controversial. I think like even the people who are dead set against doing anything against climate change generally wouldn't like argue publicly against planting trees. Like if anything, they would try to just limit it to that, and not doing anything else. Although the problem with that is like, trees alone are not a full solution to the whole climate CO2 budget, but it's definitely a very important component that also has added environmental benefits, because trees and their root systems are holding like the soil together and absorbing moisture and doing all kinds of other ecological things.
Absolutely. So this is the third one I wanted to touch a little more on today, because it kind of hits me a little close to home with the sustainable fashion. I think it's a new one. I don't remember seeing it here, but it's really about the fashion industry must change. And you think of all the waste, $2.4 trillion, and it's just constantly growing. And there's major problems with the waste in fashion, and people buying way more clothes than they need and throwing them out after wearing them once, and all the toxic chemicals that are used. So it's tricky when, again, the companies greenwash their clothing by making false claims of sustainable fabrics, even though they have no real proof, or there's no real international coordination to kind of stop this. So I'm a huge supporter of some kind of worldwide agreement to only use sustainable fabrics, to just completely ban anything. We've got so many sustainable materials available now. Yes, they're a little more expensive, but they're just so much better when you factor in the pollution costs and the total cost of ownership of that clothing. So we just need some kind of international agreement or international cooperation to just completely get rid of all these toxic clothing and
I think the main issue here is that how much it's like how disposable it is, that you're just throwing it away, and then if it's made from a material that doesn't decompose properly or can be returned to the environment, then that's a big deal. Because I think like big problem of many of these solutions is that even if you're addressing these things, like as long as you're allowing people to basically be infinitely wasteful, then it almost doesn't matter how efficient anything that you're doing is, because you're just always going to run over the maximum capacity of what you can do based on your level of efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. So in line with our whole Earth pillar, this is definitely Earth Day lies very much with our number one World Pollution Control Board pillar of trying to figure out what is the true cost of all these things. So again, we need to pay the true cost of all the clothing with some kind of carbon tax or waste tax or something, so that when somebody goes to buy a clothing that's not sustainable material, that's going to end up in our landfills or our oceans and microplastics everywhere, killing our fish and toxifying, causing cancers. We know the cost of all those things. And if you had to pay, double or triple the cost for the synthetic stuff or the bad stuff versus, more sustainable fabrics like hemp or other things that are easily recyclable or easily, reused, then basically everyone would start buying the cheaper, more reasonable options. And especially if we get to a point where we can actually ban the single-use, plastics, or ban the clothing that's just horrible for the environment, and just completely agree that we don't need it anymore. So paying the true cost of all of these clothes is super
that's
important.
the issue of universal issue of externalities. Like it's not really saying that sort of capitalism or market logic or the invisible hand of the market has to be stupid or destructive or anti-ecological. It's just if the calculation isn't factoring in actual real costs, then the calculation is incomplete, even if in principle, if it were complete, it would be correct in terms of maximizing efficiencies of the economy.
That's exactly right. And that's something that we definitely have to keep hitting home, keep knocking the door down of Congress and of all the political things worldwide. This is another thing. We have to vote Earth. And that's really what we're all about here, is learning what we need to do, learning which politicians to support, learning which politicians will help us pay the true cost of pollution in everything, and get worldwide agreements to pay the true cost. So we can't just outsource our pollution to child labor in other countries. It's got to be a worldwide cleanup. And Earth Day has the potential to unite 1 billion people participated in Earth Day in some form this year.
Yeah, I just think there's the main issue with these initiatives, I think, in practice, in actually trying to fix something, is that it's sometimes difficult to distinguish, especially for just normal people, between like those fake greenwashing type of initiatives that aren't actually doing anything. I think one of those is the carbon offset programs. Like many of them aren't actually really helping anything. They just get some sort of a officially looking certification or whatever, and they're not really doing what they're saying they're doing.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot more oversight and a lot more just international standards, internationally agreed upon laws on how to do these things. And we need to crack down on it. So we've got to elect people that are going to crack down on that and going to make the Earth a priority, invest in the Earth. So, and then of course, plastic pollution, another huge one. We should just totally ban plastics worldwide, in my opinion, over time maybe, but we're just charging the right price of it.
Although that's one thing, isn't like, what's the name of the person, like the young man who's kind of fixing it?
Yeah, the guy that's cleaning up the oceans with the big, huge snake thing.
What's his name?
That is a good thing. It is a good
Something
thing,
with
but it's still. But I still think we've got enough alternatives to plastic. We just do not need it. We have to get a call for a global plastics treaty, just like we did with the Montreal Protocol and the whole ozone layer. We need to do the same thing for our oceans and for
for sure. It's just like it's like a sort of a note of optimism that even if we were like kept failing, I think. Do you know what his like latest plan is? Because he started with like basically cleaning up the stuff inside of the ocean, but he sort of has an upgraded plan.
No, what's the new one? I haven't heard.
To focus on the mouths of rivers, like the deltas.
Right.
To not even get into the ocean. Because if you plugged basically all the major rivers that are downstream from all the main industrial production, then you would sort of nip it in the bud, like at the choke point. Basically, we basically create a choke point so that even if you keep producing it. But of course, like there's the issue with microplastics. It's basically so pervasive that it's now everywhere around the planet. Like it's even like in people who are not using plastics. The issues are that it's also toxic. So it's just one of those things that you're using when you're not fully understanding the consequences of it. And then at this point, even if you've completely stopped producing plastics, it would still take a bunch of time for it to sort of naturally filter out of the environment or the food chain, I guess. So it's in a way like a little bit like there's definitely some damage that lasting damage has already been done. But it's like I think his name is Boyajian. It's something beginning with B, like the person who's single-handedly half saving the planet by himself. Kind of James Cameron level effort.
No, it's definitely awesome what he's doing. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I do think the only path forward, especially the microplastics, is to just start banning things that are leaching microplastics. It's the only way forward. Is we eventually have to wean ourselves off the dirty stuff and move to 100% mushroom made plastic, right? They are things that are just completely biodegradable and don't leach into microplastics. And they're there. And they're getting cheaper too. And the more we kind of scale them up and industrialize them and mandate them, at the political level, we can just get all our dirty plastic industries to start making clean plastics and sustainable plastics. It's just
something kind of different than plastics that fulfills the same function. Like there's nothing wrong in particular. I guess that's even better than that might be actually returning to some sort of like a wood-based thing, assuming you're replanting the trees and maintaining a certain amount of them.
You can make plastic from cellulosic fiber, right? That's almost as good as the plastic. It's
just like basically anything from hemp.
Anything. You can make anything.
Any kind of material.
You can make bamboo containers. It's just a little more expensive because we haven't perfected it yet. We haven't made it. Precision fermentation can do the same thing, the same as it does with our food, as we talked about before. You could do precision fermentation to make, bioplastic that easily biodegrades. So solutions are definitely there. This is our chance to get them out there and say, look, guys, we've got to start moving away. We've got to start voting for politicians who are anti-plastic and start understanding that this is killing us. This is like, nuclear waste level kind of problem, and we've got the solution. We just have to force our politicians and our corporations.
I think like the issues are like in making this a reality, I think, and what is exploited by the sort of right-wing people who are pretty much lobbyists for the oil industry and various related industries. So what they're sort of exploiting is that when some politician tries to do an initiative and it's obviously a stupid initiative, but that initiative in particular, like when you're replacing plastic straws with paper straws, to basically piss off everyone when plastic straws really never were any crux of any problem. So just like doing something that doesn't really help, but also annoys everyone. And then that sort of then is being easily used to politically sway people against voting for the issue. Or just one more example, like when you're doing to celebrate Earth Day, you're doing like a worldwide massive concerts and you're wasting so much energy that you're, just by that exacerbating the problem. So although that's more defensible, it's like the ecological activists defending when they're flying with a plane. It's just like, there has to be some cost in doing the necessary things to get the political machine going so that it actually gets addressed. So there's like an issue of like, some of it you can think of as costs that are necessary. But I think it's like the issues like this that are being manipulated to sway people against supporting the Earth causes.
That's a great point. Martin. How the greenwashing, and I guess you'd call it black mirror type people that are just kind of the black ops people that are just trying to do anything they can to make people anti-environment or make people anti-tree hugger or for whatever reason make tree huggers look stupid. It's really interesting how they do that. I never really thought of it from that perspective with the straws and all the other things where they give you something only to kind of try to irritate people and make take people away from the movement, thinking this is a waste of time. This is a waste.
Sure, or it could be just exploiting that somebody sort of naively doing a wrong attempt at a wrong solution, even though that person who came up with it might not have been some sort of playing some sort of mind game, but then the people who do are exploiting these opportunities. So it's also a sort of criticism of some people in the environmental movement, so that they have to be extra careful to really push the important initiatives. It's a bit like with the sort of organizations like Greenpeace being very much anti-nuclear energy. That's sort of going against what actually is a pretty good solution to achieve their goals.
Yeah, and it's especially when they can't agree. Like we talked about last week with the Replanet one. They're really trying to focus on science and truth-based stuff, but they're disagreeing with all these other environmental groups that are anti-nuclear or anti-precision fermentation farming because they just don't understand it.
Anti-GMOs because GMOs are somehow bad.
Yeah, they just they don't understand it, so it's bad in some ways, right? Or they saw one article or one maybe fake news, maybe true news article saying why it was bad, and they end up kind of pushing it or publicizing it because it was, it was fun or it was the in thing at the time. Very tricky, but again, so back to the core of Earth Day as a celebration and the reason why it's kind of so important to at least focus on it, to highlight the issues and highlight, maybe the problems and take one day a year at a minimum to bring it to everyone in the world and say, what are we going to do this year? Almost like a New Year's resolution a little bit for the earth, right? This is our chance to really focus on what I can personally do to help save the world this year. So I think it's right up our alley, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm not sure if there's much more to say about it beyond that, really. It just comes down to each person doing the research and sharing a little bit of why Earth Day matters. Getting together with people whether it's through some kind of documentary watching. We always have a documentary at the library I've gone to several times. Local libraries, there's local cleanup efforts as well. People go outside and they hang out and they just clean up plastic or clean up waste in the local neighborhoods. They're always good.
Do you have any particular documentary movie to recommend?
Oh, good question. I remember the one that changed my life was 20 years ago, The Inconvenient Truth. It's kind of outdated now, but that was basically the movie that started me on a 20-year journey, essentially. I guess it's only been 16 years, a 16-year journey towards the environmental movement. So if you haven't watched that or something like it, it's a good start. It'd be kind of fun to watch now, even after everything we've learned in 16 years. But then there's a lot of good ones. All the agricultural ones about cattle farming industry. There's lots of those ones on Netflix. The cattle farming and sustainable agriculture and things like that are good. What about you? Do you have any personal favorites, personal recommendations for documentaries?
Well, lately I have seen one that was pretty cool, and I think it's called Spaceship Earth. It's about the Biosphere Project, like those sort of a bunch of crazy people who built the biosphere and locked themselves inside of it for an extended period of time. It's a very interesting event, I guess, in the history of the world in general, because it was sort of a first major attempt to try to create a completely isolated environment that should mimic, like, if you wanted to do something like that in space. But also, it's a thing, if you've managed to figure that out, then it sort of doesn't matter how the sort of external environment, like how hostile the external environment gets, because you could have a controlled biosphere within which you could still be able to manage an environment. It just did show that it's tricky. It's actually harder than one would think it is, but there were some interesting things learned in the process of doing this experiment. But it's also interesting if you look at, like, who were the people who did that, because it was I think they started as like a theater company of actors. It was a very interesting, very hippie thing, but also quite impressive.
Very cool. And that was a good question. It kind of caught me off guard. I've seen literally thousands of documentaries probably in the last 16 years. So it's really hard to kind of pick my favorite ones. But we probably should have a list on our website. It's something that we should kind of pick our top 5 or top 10. That is something that the earthday.org does have. There's a list of 20 or 30 of their top documentaries there. So check that one out. I haven't seen a lot of them myself, so also I'm going to go and check those out soon. But the bottom line is, however much time you have to focus on it, anything is good. Anything is better than nothing. Learn something new and then share it. Don't just watch a documentary. Do something about it. Be active. Get out there and do action. And talk to your friends. Make sure your friends are kind of understanding anything that you come across, and share it with as many people as you can. To me, that's what Earth Day is really all about. Talking to my family, my friends, and anybody who's listening to this podcast, and just making one small step for me, one giant leap for mankind to push forward and make the Earth a better place, to build this utopia behind me one step at a time. Protopia. I've got to use that word. The protopian future of Earth starts Earth Day, one day at a time.
One Earth Day at a time.
One Earth Day at a time. Okay, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We're gonna wrap it up there, just to kind of make it a fun, quick video to watch. We don't want to drag it on too long, because we want you to go watch more documentaries and get more ideas. And please share with us your favorite documentaries. Share with us what you'd like us to focus on next, as we continue to strive to find the solutions that we're all looking for, we're all hoping for, to really have a better world, and a much safer, more harmonious, and prosperous place for all of us. Thanks for joining us.
And presumably cleaner.
Much cleaner, much more beautiful. Think of the more beautiful natural world letting us rewild everything and make it a beautiful place to go outdoors and just inhale the beautiful clean air that we're hoping to have for the long-term future. So thanks so much again, and let's save the world together.